Hello, we are reading Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson, and we are on chapter 18, How My Sea Adventure Began. The mutineers did not return that day, and at our end, however, Hunter did not recover from his injuries. He died that very night. The captain was wounded badly. Just after noon, after seeing that the coast was clear, the doctor took his pistols and he headed out to meet Ben. Gray thought him insane for doing so. I couldn't sit and wait, so I sneaked out, filled my pockets with biscuits, and went on my own mission. I wanted to see if Ben's boat was still there and in good condition. I took pistols and powder. I know it was foolish of me to go ashore, to go alone. But by doing so, I managed to save us all. I saw Long John Silver and the pirates pulling back to shore from the boat. I could hear his parrot squawking in the wind. And when I realized that they were heading in my direction, I hurried to the White Rock. The boat was hidden below it. It was very simple and very light. I waited until the darkness and fog set in, and I carried the little boat out into the water. From where I was, I could see two lights, one coming from the defeated pirates on shore and the other from the ship. And that was where I quietly and carefully made my way. The tiny vessel I was in took me to the Hispaniola quicker than I expected. It took a little while to get used to the boat, but it was fairly solid and light on the waters. Soon I was at the side of the ship. I reached out and I held the thick rope attached to the anchor, called the hawser, Hawser, if you want to look it up for a picture. It was tight and taut. One cut with my knife and the ship would go humming along the tide. I also knew that the hawser could kill me with the force at which it would snap if I was not careful. That moment I finished cutting the final threads, it slipped under the water. There were loud, angry noises coming from the deck. It was Israel Hands and the man who came after me with the knife in his mouth. I heard them call each other terrible names, and at that moment a strong breeze came and the ship began moving away. Luckily, my boat didn't smash it against the ship. I stood up and saw the two men fighting, holding each other by their throats. I ducked quickly and I shut my eyes. Suddenly, I felt the boat moving quicker. When we had gone past the shore. The campfire was right behind me. The ship was moving sideways. The sailors had ceased fighting as if they knew that something was quite wrong. I flattened myself against the bottom of my boat and I trembled with fear. I must have been like that for hours. Soon I grew drowsy with the movements of the boat and I fell asleep, dreaming of my home and at the Admiral Benbow Inn. Chapter 19. How I Struck the Jolly Rogers. When I woke up, my boat was making its way to the south end of the island, and I was being tossed back and forth by giant waves. I realized that I could either drown or get smashed against the sharp rocks, as I didn't have a paddle. The shore was impossible to get to. The boat stopped tossing, and it began to go smoothly over the waves. I thought if this continued, I could just about reach the land. The sun was burning brightly, and my throat was parched. As I turned around the next cove, I saw something unbelievable. The Hispaniola was heading right at me in full sail. My first thought was that the sailors were chasing me, but then I saw that the ship was moving on its own. There was no one steering it at all. It occurred to me that I could try to take the ship back to the captain, but if the pirates were still on board, could I subdue them all and take control of the ship? The idea was appealing enough. The wind stopped for just a moment, as did the ship. Then as suddenly as she stopped, she began to spin towards me with her cabin window open. I saw that the wooden beam that jutted out from the mast would be over my head. And once it was over my head, I jumped up and I caught the beam. The ship suddenly rose up in the waves and came crashing down on my little boat. I held on tightly to the beam, as I could easily get tossed back out to the sea. I slowly crawled my way to the deck. What a mess the deck was. The sails were up, but I saw the two watchmen lying in a heap not far from me. I saw Israel Hands and the other man, too. He moved a bit, but the other man was dead. Just then Israel started moaning and moving about, and I saw that he was hurt and bleeding as well. I walked over to him and stood over his body. He rolled over and called for something to drink. I searched for food and water, and I took these off the deck and gave Israel some of it, but not before having my full share. He groaned and said, "Long John's dead now. Where the heck did you come from?" "I've come to take back the ship, and you may call me captain until further notice." He looked at me sourly, but he did not say a word. I told him that I would now take down the Jolly Roger. I happily scampered up and cut the flag loose. "That's the end of Long John Silver," I said. Well, now, Hans said, this man and I were going to sail the ship back, but he's dead now, so it's up to us. Why don't you get me something to tie my bleeding leg with so that I can help you steer the ship? Do you think I am stupid? I am not going to let you sail back to where Silver is. I said, the north is where we shall go. I don't have a choice now, do I? I'll sail wherever you want to go. It's your ship and you are the captain and all, cried Hans. And after that I helped him tie his wound and gave him something to eat. We then sailed back to shore. I noticed his sad look had turned into a sneer and that he was watching my every move very carefully. And that is the end of chapter 19.